All right, well, thanks for staying. This is the Heart Talk segment, and in this segment, we're talking the dangers that are associated with building on waterways. So, Ghanaians have been advised, time without number, to stop building houses on waterways. This, of course, to avert the rampant flooding of the capital city of Accra. But it seems that this advice is falling on deaf ears as more and more people keep building on waterways. Indeed, on Tuesday, February 20, we saw scores of residents at Chado, somewhere around the Tashi area. They stood defenseless and watched their homes lowered to rubble by a task force that was deployed by the Dadekotopon Municipal Assembly. But what does it mean to build on waterways, and what indeed are those dangers that are associated with this practice? Well, as part of our conversation this morning, we'll try and identify or help you identify, that piece of land that is not in waterway. Yeah, and so joining me to have this conversation, and indeed, of course, like I said earlier, we're looking as well at, the challenges, with this whole issue of making sure that people do not even find themselves in that space in the first place, and then the best ways forward. Well, he is the Vice President, Ghana Institute of Surveyors, and also with the Lands Commission. Mohammed Al-Hassan is my guest this morning. You're welcome to the show.
Thank you.
All right.
But before you continue, it's Ghana Institute of Planners, not Surveyors.
Institute of Planners and not Surveyors.
So that's very important.
Thank you so much for the correction. All right. So, Mohammed, once again, you're welcome to the show.
Thank you.
This is a conversation that has been running for God knows how long. And I'm sure that, like a lot of our viewers this morning, myself, we're wondering exactly what are the challenges in dealing with this issue. Time without number, we've associated building on waterways to the flooding that we see, because then the reasons that are given are that because of that act, rainwaters do not get into the appropriate drains, and it piles up and causes the flooding that usually takes. We saw June 3, June 4, and the lives that were lost. Is it a case that the assemblies, and I'm taking it from the assembly because they are directly responsible, is it a case that the assemblies do not have a good development plan? The reason why that we see the indiscriminate building on waterways?
Let me say emphatically that every space within the Greater Accra metropolitan area, and when I say the Greater Accra metropolitan area, I'm referring to the entire space from the shorelines, from the sea, to the Equapin range foothills, is covered by one plan or the other. The challenge has to do with implementation of those plans and enforcement of rules and regulations regarding the implementation of same. So that is really where the challenge is with the assemblies.
So if I got you right, are we supposed to, let me put it this way, whose responsibility is it to ensure that indeed, if you're putting up such structures, you are way off some of these areas that pose a threat to us?
Right. The primary responsibility lies with the district assemblies. The law establishing them says that they should be responsible for the planning and overall development of their areas of jurisdiction. And the same Local Governance Act empowers them to require people to seek permit before they develop. And the law further says that if you do not have permit and you develop, that would constitute an unauthorized development. If you do have permit and you violate the permit conditions, that will make your development an unauthorized development. If you do have a permit and the permit is revoked and you continue to build, that would be an unauthorized development. And so it's the case that the assemblies simply are unable to match up with the day-to-day developments that take place, especially in these areas that you are referring to. Let me just say that normally the procedure is that if you put up an unauthorized development, the assembly is supposed to notify you to show cause why the development should not be pulled down, abated, and so on and so forth. But in the case of developments in public right of space, and these include the water courses, they have the power to remove such a structure without advance notice to the developer.
So I guess we will go into those details,
That's
exactly
right.
what
That's
it takes
That's right.
to even get those structures or properties
right.
of those areas. You have mentioned challenges with implementation of the law.
That's right.
That empowers the assemblies to ensure that indeed these things do not happen, or if they happen, that they ensure that they are cleared off.
Yes.
Just to ensure free flow.
That's right.
Okay. So I might not necessarily be wrong if I say that they probably do not have the best, plans to ensure that they do not happen in the first place.
Well, if you say plans, that's relative. If it's planned in the form of the way the land use structure is organized and implemented, that I am emphasizing, they largely do have. If it's planned about the enforcement regimes or the implementation arrangements,
so I think both ways, and so
then perhaps
yes,
I'll agree with you on that score,
yes,
but not a plan as in how the space should be organized.
So on the latter they have challenges.
That's right. I agree with you on that.
But I'm looking at a situation where, because then, considering that people are not told, when to stop when putting up these structures, could we remove, say, builders from liability?
The point is that I think an average citizen of Ghana now knows when they are doing something wrong. For example,
Yes, we do it with impunity.
Yeah, yes, and it is the responsibility, I agree with you, on the part of the assembly to notify or stop them altogether. That, again, I agree with you. When I say challenge, as to why, because it's much easier to get somebody to remove their building or structure when it is just about starting, and probably even surcharge them, than to allow it to fester. Usually if it's just starting or it's one structure, two structures, administratively, that can be tackled.
In effect, you're suggesting that we have collectively failed.
Well, I would, because we all have specific responsibilities.
So it's a shared responsibility.
Yes, I think just leave it with the assemblies and say that they have to, because all the powers are with them.
Indeed.
All the powers are with them to notify, to do the surveillance, and to identify who is supposed to be doing the right thing, or who is doing the right thing, or who is not doing the right thing. There has been much talk about inadequate staff. Yes, that is true, but I think technology is moving faster and making it somewhat easier for somebody to see what is happening hundreds of miles away without necessarily being there. I mean, deploying drones can help, for example. And why, I guess, if a Metropolitan Chief Executive was seated here, they would be able to tell us why some of those measures that look somehow possible, not somehow possible, very possible, do not take place.
I'm sure you're looking at modern ways of dealing with this issue.
Yes, because if you have a challenge, you just have to find a way of dealing with it.
I was asking someone the question, do we always have to necessarily move these structures off the waterways? Or could we at least redirect the water? Or let me just put it this way, can't we have engineers, ensure that we can even build on waterways without any problem? Some countries are built on rivers.
Yes, those countries do not have options, at the spur of the moment. So, I mean, where the entire land space is about 80, 90, 70% water, then you have very little options and in which case you may be forced to deploy such engineering measures. But in our case, the point is, have we really gotten there? No, we haven't gotten to a point where we have to force ourselves to use engineering measures to settle ourselves on waterways. I mean, waterways are natural entities or elements that would usually they are ecosystems. I mean, they breathe and live like we do. And so they would want to do things the normal way. You can divert and all of that, but it's just a matter of time because it's nature. I mean, once it rises anytime, then it just finds its way, and that is why the flooding occurs. Now, the flooding, remember, sometimes are in years involving, cycles involving several years. There are certain flood events that occur once every 10 years, once every 20 years, once every 50 years. So there are times that people live their entire lives without witnessing it and thinking nothing would happen. So if you take the Udome area, for example, it's almost at power below sea level. There will be a day when they will be flooded. I mean, it's not questionable. There will be a day. I mean, we may witness it or not, but when that cycle comes, they will suffer. So that's what happens. I would say that in Ghana, we haven't gotten to a point where we have to engineer waterways merely to allow people to settle on. No, we haven't gotten there.
All right, it's 8 after 8. We're talking, building on waterways, the dangers associated with this, practice, and the best ways forward. Of course, we've looked at some of the challenges as well. If if you have any such experience to share with us, why not? We're going to be opening the phone lines in a bit, get you to calling, share with us your own experience. Have you had to, watch your house, reduce to rubble? Before? Have you been in that position where your house had to be, pulled down, or a property, anything of a sort? Share with us exactly what that experience was and how that was dealt with, or how you managed it. Okay, you talk about challenges within the assemblies that probably could be a reason why we are not able to see action or proper action, if you like. I'm sure that on the part of the assembly as well, they will be arguing. They are supposed to be reporting to a certain ministry. They don't work in isolation. Whose responsibility is it to ensure that they have the resources, logistics, and everything that they need to work effectively? Local government ministry, works and housing.
Yes, the challenges are in several fronts, admittedly. We have challenges with coordination. Let's start from there before we come to who is at the top.
So that's a big issue.
Yes, because the assemblies at the bottom end, and so they receive all the rules, the laws, the policies to implement. Now, you have institutions such as the Water Resources Commission, who are responsible for just safeguarding water quality, giving rights to people to, abstract water or not, providing guidance on what buffer spaces should be allowed between the nearest development and the water body. And for your information, I think the minimum distance, the barest minimum each person should allow is 10 meters. That's the minimum. Minimum means, when we come down, it means that under no circumstance should somebody building be closer to a water body in less than, that's 30 feet approximately. But this is not the case because perhaps the Water Resources Commission, I guess, who are in charge of taking care of these water ecosystems, can also come in a certain way. We have the EPA. Because remember, these buffer spaces usually would contain greens, and destroying them constitutes a violation to an aspect of our environment.
Right.
And so if the assembly does not get you here, the EPA could arrest you at the other end. We have traditional authority. Let's not take them out of this. Before the normal governance structures came, they were in charge, and we are all aware of how some of these water bodies even have been turned into deities and worshipped, and you can't even cross them to do legitimate activity, not to talk of destroying them in some days, and it still happens in Ghana. So then what happens? So you have layers of responsibilities that have been left unattended to over the years. Coming to who supervises, yes, we have the local government ministry, but what else can the ministry do than to implore the assemblies to do their work? Perhaps the harshest measure they can take is to say, Assembly A, you have sat back, relaxed, and allowed people to build on waterways. And so, Mr. MC or DC, A or B, you haven't done your job, and therefore, you'll be subjected to some punishment. But I think let's look at the solution side. What I think is that increasingly the MMDCs, the municipal and district chief executives,
yes,
should begin to have or be given clear performance indicators relating to some of these occurrences, so that the responsibility for ensuring that it doesn't occur lies with you. You find your way to deal with it. Otherwise, you fail, you default on that indicator, and which can cost you in one way or the other. In which case, people would stop doing the blame game and succumbing to sometimes unnecessary pressure, which I failed to mention. I mean, if my structure was being pulled down right now, it is possible I know somebody I can just call, and he would ask somebody to stay execution. It happens. I don't want to pretend about that. These are all part of the reasons why we have this challenge still rolling. And so collectively, like you said, I will come back to agree with that. We have failed because if you've done the wrong thing, you have to take responsibility and stop making phone calls.
And I agree with you on that. Douglas from DC says that with those buildings on waterways, the authorities are much aware of them, but because of love for money, they allow them to build, on the waterways. And if the money stop coming in, then they can start voicing out. You want my guests to understand that with waterways issues, they can never stop it. Okay, well, he's blaming it on corruption. Can corruption be partly blamed?
It is
on
not,
this?
not can. It's not.
It's exactly what it is. I mean, you see lands. It's so obvious they are on waterways and they're being sold. They put for sale on there.
Yes. The point is that, let me make this point also, that the land ownership regime sometimes almost allow people to claim ownership over such spaces. And I have seen situations where people will land certificates and brandish it in front of everybody and say, that is my land. Fine. Under these same laws, you can own the land, but the use rights would have to be determined by somebody. And so we come back to the assemblies that whether it is your land or it is public land, once it is determined in an approved plan that that space cannot be developed into a residential property, but be left as a buffer zone to protect water body, that should be it.
But shouldn't we be reviewing this law then? I mean, considering that we know exactly what problems that, they create for us.
Yes, I agree with you. I think the land law is under review, and I personally made a point to that effect that it should be difficult or impossible for somebody to claim ownership over spaces that are clearly declared or determined as public spaces. So, for example, you can't go claiming ownership over a buffer zone, the space we have left to protect water bodies, to prevent sedimentation, to prevent chemicals flowing, and so on and so forth. You can't go laying claim over a space over which a pipeline has been laid or a transmission line is running or space adjacent a road and so on. These are public spaces.
Right.
I mean, whether compensation has been paid or not, these are some of the arguments people make also to say, well, it's been acquired and used for this, but I was not paid compensation. But yes, that doesn't give you the right to go and do the wrong thing.
So our phone lines are activated now. You can call in and share with us your experience, or if you have any question for my guests, kindly call in. The numbers are up on your screen. You made mention of compensation, and I'm tempted to ask, because we've seen it happen, time with that number, where persons who are affected by some of these demolitions are now requesting for, compensations. Is that the case? Is that what we should do as a country? Should we compensate people who are usually affected by some of these demolitions on our waterways?
No, it's on case-by-case basis. You don't go and reward wrong by giving you money, saying thank you to you for successfully doing the wrong thing. And so, yes, but the general principle is that once the state institutions go to sleep and allow this to happen for some time, then it is assumed that they are comfortable with it. And once they are comfortable with it, then you cannot forcefully remove somebody without providing an alternative to them. But if it is the case that instant action is taken, in most cases, you wouldn't have to bother about compensation.
All right. Shirley, you're calling from a Shaman.
A
Shaman, okay. You're live. What's your contribution or question?
Actually, I have the same problem in my area. A Shaman. Yes, please.
Could you kindly turn down the volume on your set? Yes, turn it down and let's talk through the phone.
Okay, I also have the same problem in my area. I've even complained to the second.
Shirley, you're live. Please go ahead.
Okay. I'm saying that I'm calling from a Shaman.
Yes. What's your question?
I have the same problem in my area. Can you hear me, Rachel?
Yes, please, I can hear you. We're listening, so just go ahead.
Yes, I'm saying that I'm calling from a Shaman. I have the same problem in my area. And I've gone to the assembly 1,000 times, and they wouldn't solve that problem for me.
Exactly what is your problem?
They have built in the waterway where we are supposed to even use cars. They have blocked that place, sold it out for people, and the whole place, when it rains, when it rains, every water diverts to my house. When I bought the land years back, I was told that about 30 meters, as the man said, 30 feet away from my house is the waterway. So nobody should build in that area. So my land was the last to the left. So there's a way in front of me, a way beside me. But now the one beside me, people have built to the main road. And I've gone to the assembly. When I went there, they were claiming I should bring 400 Ghana before they come to the place to come and even see. And I said, you're supposed to come and do your job. You have not done it. I have taken the trouble upon myself to come there and complain the issue
and
to
the 400 Ghana cedi was for what?
I don't know. They said that is the transportation or whatever they will use to come.
Okay.
So one man came. Actually, the man was also from my. When he asked where I was from, he realized he was coming from my hometown. And I said, no, this is not right. I shouldn't pay anything. He will make sure that that problem is solved.
So how has it been resolved? Let's keep it short. How has it been resolved?
They have not resolved it. Even till now, they have not come to check.
Okay.
I've been there more than 3 times. They have not come. I've petitioned the DCE, the engineer, and even the planners. Nobody has come to my area till now that I'm talking to you.
Shirley, keep it right here. Thank you so much for calling in. Mohammed?
Yes, so the options available to her under the circumstance, she's done the first step activity, which is to petition. If she believes that they almost intentionally do not want to take care of the situation, she can perhaps handle it as a matter of class action,
which is
get some other people in the community.
Okay.
Community
leaders?
Not leaders, a group, just
okay.
Not you alone. I mean, get in touch with neighbor ABC,
okay,
and then you push it. That works faster sometimes. If it's still not working, the option available is to seek redress in the courts. We have a procedure to compel the assemblies to do their job.
Okay. Shirley, I hope this helps. Okay, so you can call in as well, but I'm going to take another phone call, but just think about it. So if I need a parcel of land, what are the things that I have to be looking out for, just to be sure that I stay clear of waterways? So I'll get that response when we come back. Kelvin, thanks for joining us this morning.
Yes,
do you have a question? Can you turn down the volume on the sets? I can hear myself here, getting a lot of feedback.
Okay.
All right. We're good to go, I guess.
Okay. Yeah, I'm calling from Dakuman. And Dakuman Junction is a main street from connecting all the way to Odoko. And there's been a water park. It's also good at all. Even the transport drivers have to stop in the middle of the street to pick passengers and all that. And it's very dangerous.
All right. So I hope you got him.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, though.
Okay.
Yes,
so I think that's a fairly different subject.
Yeah.
But to get a land, the right thing to do is to request the one giving you the land to produce a site plan for you, to go to the fiscal planning department of the assembly to confirm the zoning. So they would let you know, the land you want to buy, what do you want to use it for? I want to build a house. Okay, it falls within a residential zone, and so you can proceed. But if it falls within any other space, let's say the buffer zone to a water body or an industrial area and so on, you would be advised appropriately. Assuming you clear this process, things are okay here, you will then proceed to do your transaction, make your payment, get your receipts and your indentures, and proceed to register your land with the Lands Commission. Now, the outcome of the registration would be a land certificate, which you would enclose as part of your submission to the assembly for permits before you can develop. Yes.
Let me take one other call. Beauty. Hello.
Hello.
Yes, Beauty. You're calling from Accra, right? Good morning. Your contribution,
I'm
please.
calling from Accra, Beauty.
Sure. Please go ahead.
Okay, I want to say something in respect of those houses that were demolished on the waterways. Well, I think those people should be compensated.
You think they should be compensated?
Yeah, I think they should be compensated.
Why? Why do you think they should be compensated?
They used money to build those houses. And from the look of things, some of those people are just some kind of minor business people. And they really spent a lot of money on those projects, on the building of those houses. And I think, please, profoundly, they should be compensated.
Well, thank you very much. But I think that Mohammed explained early on, you as well have that responsibility to do your own checks. And I think that's what you were explaining.
Yes. Compensation, let me say that in situations where the situation on the ground, let's say it was already covered by a plan, you complied, you built, and then later there's a decision to revise the plan, and then the space you are occupying now becomes a place you cannot occupy. In that case, you will be entitled to compensation. In this case, what it means is that you are being forced to comply with a revised situation.
Like the situation with, I think, the road expansion works.
Correct.
We've seen over the years where sometimes structures along those,
so let's say that at the time you were acquiring the land, it wasn't part of the road reservation. Now there's an expansion program coming on. In this case, you have to be giving compensation. But if it's the case that you just indulge in yourself, you go get your land, you don't care about anything, when I say don't care about anything, you just simply didn't do any checks.
Right.
And you were simply in a hurry to build, and, you know, they come to demolish. You do not have to cry for compensation. There are exceptions. I mentioned earlier that where the authorities sleep on their duty for a long time, sometimes it entitles you to, because the presumption then is that they are comfortable. Silence means consent. So
Indeed.
once they've looked on and allow you to be there, you lived your life, especially begun to have family and so on and so forth, you know, removing people in this case destabilizes their lives, and then they are supposed to get compensated, especially if it's foreign funded, World Bank, and they would insist that you compensate.
All right. William, good morning.
Yeah. Good morning.
Where are you calling from? William, could you turn down the volume? Turn it down.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. So,
Yeah, what I wanted to know is does this fall within only water, low zone or high tension pole as well?
Okay, I think this particular conversation we're restricting to building on waterways.
Okay,
Yes.
because we had the same problem at Dakuma. We had the block factory down the distant lane, a high tension pole, and they demolished it, and now it has been sent to restaurant rather. And I wanted to know which of them is far better.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. So, yeah.
Yes, you are right. The transmission lines, or high tension lines, as you call them, there's a whole law governing them. There's a minimum reservation you have to observe. There's a height, assuming you happen to be passing under, driving under, your vehicle must have a certain minimum, maximum height above which you cannot go. There are certain activities such as electrical, welding, and so on and so forth that are not allowed to be. Even though I admit I see a lot of that happening, you see mechanics, welders right under the center line of electricity transmission line. This is dangerous and wrong. And like I kept saying, so it's coordination. Assembly primarily is supposed to manage all these spaces. But in this case, VRA comes in.
Yes.
So if it's on a highway, Ghana Highway Authority,
Indeed.
and the law also have the powers to. And so until they come together, work with each other, I don't think the assemblies will succeed alone under the circumstance.
All right. So in wrapping up, we just want you to go over, you know, those things that you should be looking out for if indeed you're going in for a parcel of land, just so that you're clear of, you know, any such obstacles.
That's right. So number one, you have to request for a site plan, and then you do a search to ascertain whether you are buying the land for the right use. After that, you go to finalize your transaction with the person. You make your payments, you get the necessary documents, in which case, most cases you have an indenture executed, and then you proceed to start the registration processes with the Lands Commission. Once that is done, you'll be given a land certificate. You enclose it with your drawings, and then you submit to the Fiscal Planning Department of the District Assembly in question, and then they will process and give you your permit. They are supposed to do that within a maximum of 90 days, ideally. So if it's taking longer than that, then there possibly must be a problem, and you have to follow up.
All right. The interesting thing is how they usually would wait for the structure to come up before years later it is pulled down. Is it deliberate?
Not. It's a combination of factors, including the corruption bit. You sense that. So MC sends his team, and then somebody, he decides to be corrupt, so he sees the thing and he doesn't act on it. Or the entire system just looks on. I mean, driving by and seeing them and saying, well, and sometimes it's the metal politics into it, and say these are people, you can touch them, or the chief has called to say, please wait, I have an interest, and so on and so forth. So I think collectively we have to work at this. It's not primarily Assembly has to be working on it, but we have the chiefs, private individuals must take responsibility, you know, political leaders, and so on and so forth.
So for you, the best way to sustain our fight against building on waterways would be?
Yeah, would be the assembly doing its job.
Okay.
First of all, yes. Just go do your job. If it's your boss who says do not touch it, then you have the choice to either resign or proceed to do the right thing.
All right. Well, so Mohammed Al Hassan, he is a vice president, Ghana Institute of Planners, of course, and as well with the Lands Commission. And many thanks once again for your time this morning. Let me quickly read a couple of messages.
Also, please, I don't work with the Lands Commission.
You're no longer with the Lands Commission.
Yeah,
okay,
yeah,
my producer will be responding to all of these questions. Thank you very much.
Thank
all
you.
right, so Agi, you say that, please, the developer at Old Shaman has also built on the waterway and causing loads of discomfort for us anytime it rains. All attempts to make him act otherwise has proved futile, and it's around the ICGC church in Old Shaman. Okay, thank you. I'm sure that it's taken note of. Hello, I'm Kelvin. I have been a victim of demolition exercises which affected a pull down of my house. That same place has been has been constructed or has been turned into a fuel station, you say. And you're talking about Ajay Kojo Tema West. Initially, they said they were looking for 100 meters away from the road, and it turned out to be something else. All right. Well, thank you. And then finally, you are asking that, do we have to wait till the lands are full with houses before we start with a new technology to build over waterways? It's a real situation here. Ghana for you. All right, well, so these are some of your messages. So we have a lot more that we'll be sharing with you as we go along. But it's a wrap on our Hard Talk segment for today. We have coming up, of course, updates from the world of sports, arts, and entertainment. But in the meantime, enjoy this music from Flavor.
Mastercraft on the